Okay, let's go ahead and do section 5.3, page 3. So here we have a theorem. It's called side angle side. Well, we've heard that before. So because we've heard that before, we have to put this similar sign afterwards because this is what it means to prove them similar. We still have the same idea of side angle side. So let's read it. If an angle of one triangle is congruent to an angle of a second triangle, okay, so let's just go ahead and say this angle with this angle, and the pairs of sides including the angle are proportional, okay, then the triangles are similar. So they say the pairs of side including the angle, meaning they want the pairs on the opposite sides of the angles, okay, the part that includes that angle. So this is the way I like to do it. I like to do, let's give one here and one here, showing that those are the ones that correspond to each other. And then I'll do two here, so I'm using little similar signs, okay? So that's why we have side, angle, side, okay? Now note that the similar side is used to differentiate between SAS for congruent triangles and SAS for similar triangles. Of course, they mean entirely different things. These are not congruent triangles. You can tell that by looking. This one is bigger than this one. So be careful to use that symbol. Okay, let's try this proof. So we're given that these sides are proportional. So let's take a look and see. They're saying DG, so let's mark that. All right, DG over DE. So that's going to be a little bit hard to show here. But let's try with just the little triangle because that's the side in the big triangle. So DG to DE. And then we have DH. So it's proportional to DH over DF. So DH over DF. So they're saying that we have these two sides proportional. So this one is proportional to the whole thing, but it's hard for me to show that. And this one is proportional to the whole thing. Okay. So we're given that. What are we trying to prove? We're trying to prove that angle DGH, so this angle here, is congruent to this angle here. Okay, well let's look at this. Which triangles seem to be similar? Which ones look to be similar? I see a little triangle right here, and I see a big triangle right here. Don't they look like they're similar? Doesn't it look like this one is just a shrunken version of this big one? Well, that's actually what it is. So we just have to prove it. So we're going to start out by writing down DG over DE is equal to DH over DF. And the reason for that is given. Okay. Then we've got to get something else. Well, we have two ways now to prove that triangles are similar. Well, why are we proving they're similar? We're trying to prove that these angles correspond to each other, that they're congruent. If we can prove that these two triangles are congruent, then we can say that those two angles are congruent. Oops, I used the wrong word. Those two triangles are not congruent, are they? If we can prove that these two triangles are similar, okay, then we will know that these angles are congruent. So I'm going to go ahead and try to prove those triangles similar. If I can prove them similar, then I can make this statement. So right here on this line will be that the angles are congruent. On this line, it'll be that the triangles are similar. So we only have one more step. We have that the sides are in proportion. So we have two ways to prove triangles similar. We have AA, meaning we need to show two angles. And we have side angle side. Well, don't we have two sides? So all we have to do is prove one angle congruent. Well, if you think about tracing these triangles, you have this one right here, right? And then you have, let's get another color, this one right here. Okay. What do you notice? I mean, I had to go around those letters, sorry about that. But you can see that aren't they sharing that angle? Okay, so if we share that angle, we know that it's the same angle, so let's say angle D is congruent to angle D. What's the reason for that? Identity or reflexive. It's the same angle. Okay, so now we have it. One way that you might, I'm just thinking, might have been easier to do, if we put this little triangle like this and call this D, G, H, and then do the bigger triangle. Oops, I wanted it in blue. Kind of hard to make that into blue now. Okay, and call this D, E, F. Then it makes it a lot easier to say, hey, they're both angle Ds. And this side corresponds to this side, and this side corresponds to this side, okay? Then we've got it. Then you can see it, side, angle, side. Okay, so we're ready to say it. We can say triangle GDH, triangle DGH, DGH is congruent or similar? I was gonna write congruent, but that's not true. It's similar. To triangle, DGH would be DEF. Okay, so those triangles are similar, and why? Because of side, angle, side, similar. So make sure that you do put that. That's going to be worth points, okay? So you want to make sure that you put a similar sign there. Okay, we're down to our last step. We know that we're trying to prove these angles. So angle DGH is congruent. Now here it's true, the angles are congruent in similar triangles. So let's take a look. Angle DGH would correspond with angle DEF or angle E. So those two correspond. How do we know that? Well, we're trying to say that the angles are congruent in similar triangles. So we would say corresponding angles of similar triangles are congruent. Okay? And that's it for page 3. We've got one more page in this section.